October 1962. The world teetered on the edge of nuclear disaster. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, faced off in a deadly game of brinkmanship. Most people went about their lives unaware of how close they were to annihilation. The Cold War's shadow loomed, with Berlin, Korea, and Vietnam as flashpoints. But Cuba was different. Soviet Premier Khrushchev secretly sent nuclear missiles to Cuba, disguised as harmless cargo. The goal: shift the balance of power, protect Castro's regime, and threaten the U.S. directly. Soviet diplomats denied everything, insisting there were only defensive weapons in Cuba. The Americans grew suspicious, but proof was elusive. This deception bought the Soviets precious time. Each day, the missile sites inched closer to readiness. The world's fate hung by a thread, the clock ticking in the shadows. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction meant any misstep could be fatal. The stage was set for a confrontation that could end civilization. The world held its breath, waiting for the truth to emerge. In Washington, President Kennedy watched Soviet moves with growing alarm. The Bay of Pigs failure haunted him. He couldn't afford another mistake. Intelligence trickled in. Strange cargo, construction, whispers of missiles, but nothing concrete. U-2 spy planes soared over Cuba, risking war to gather evidence. Khrushchev, angered by U.S. missiles in Turkey, sought to level the playing field. Soviet Ambassador Dobrynin assured the U.S. there were no offensive weapons in Cuba. A calculated lie. The world's most powerful men played a high-stakes game of deception and denial. Behind diplomatic smiles, a terrifying reality took shape just 90 miles from Florida. The crisis was about to explode into the open. October 14, 1962. A U-2 flight over Cuba brought back undeniable proof. Soviet nuclear missiles were being installed. President Kennedy was briefed. The threat was now real and immediate. He formed XCOM, a secret group of advisors, to weigh the options: airstrike, invasion, or blockade. Each choice risked nuclear war. They chose a quarantine, not a blockade, to avoid declaring war and to buy time. The media adopted the term, shaping public perception. Carefully managed information became a weapon as vital as any missile. The administration released facts selectively, rallying allies and isolating the Soviets. The American public was told of grave danger, but not the full extent of the crisis. Inside the White House, the pressure was immense. Every word, every move could tip the world into catastrophe. Truth became a tool, wielded with precision in the war room. The countdown to disaster had begun. On October 22nd, Kennedy addressed the nation, revealing the missiles in Cuba and announcing a naval quarantine. Fear swept the globe, families huddled by their radios, schools drilled for nuclear attack. U.S. forces went to DEFCON 2, one step from nuclear war. Bombers circled missiles were readied, and the Navy formed a ring around Cuba. Soviet ships approached the quarantine line. Would they stop or force a confrontation? Secret back-channel talks began between Robert Kennedy and Soviet Ambassador Dobrynin, searching for a peaceful solution. On October 27th, Black Saturday, an American U-2 was shot down over Cuba, killing the pilot. Military advisors urged immediate retaliation, but Kennedy hesitated, fearing escalation. Khrushchev, too, sensed the danger of losing control. The world stood on the brink, one mistake away from nuclear war. In the shadows, desperate negotiations continued. The fate of millions depended on a handful of men keeping their nerve. The next move would decide everything. Urgent messages from Khrushchev arrived in Washington. The Soviets offered to remove their missiles if the U.S. pledged not to invade Cuba. Then, a tougher demand: remove U.S. missiles from Turkey. Kennedy's team responded only to the first, more conciliatory offer. On October 28th, the world heard the deal. Soviet missiles out of Cuba, U.S. promises no invasion. Secretly, the U.S. agreed to remove its obsolete missiles from Turkey, later and quietly. The public never knew the full bargain. Deception and diplomacy, not brute force, averted disaster. The Cuban Missile Crisis proved that sometimes what remains hidden is what saves us. The world exhaled, forever changed by 13 days on the edge.